All right, man, peace. So the most irrelevant series of this current NBA playoffs, in my view, is the series between the Toronto Raptors and the Washington Wizards. I don't see championship-level DNA in either one of those squads. As I predicted, they're 2-2 after 4 games. Washington is basically a slightly lower-level version of the Toronto Raptors. I still expect Toronto to win in 7 games, and I expect it to be a home court series. So anyway they're going to talk about it, I'm going to chime in.
There's Washington, Max, creeping in on your pick, Toronto. Should the Raptors be concerned?
I think the Raptors are going to win the series, but when you're not at 2-2, of course there's a certain level of concern.
You're concerned.
But the Raptors need to mostly be I thought the Raptors would win. I forgot if I said 5 or 6. If I said 5, that's gone by the wayside.
Well, anybody who's paid attention to the Raptors over the course of the last 3 to 4 seasons knows that they're a regular season team. They're going to win anywhere from 51 to 58 games. They're going to perform relatively well because they're coached moderately well, but they don't have top-level players. And when you look through the annals of NBA history, championship teams normally have transcendent players. They don't have any. DeMar DeRozan is a nice player. Kyle Lowry is a serviceable point guard. He's a serviceable point guard who's maxed out on his talent, on his ability. That's why they've put him in all-star games, even though to me he's not an all-star level player. DeMar DeRozan has a lot of natural physical ability, but mentally he is just not where he needs to be to lead a team to a championship. And the fact that he confessed that he had depression issues or some other type of mental fragility was not surprising to me because it shows in the playoffs. What their coach, Dwayne Casey, needs to show me is that he has the coaching fortitude to stick to his guns and maintain their offensive system even in clutch moments and not allow it to devolve into one-on-one when you don't have transcendent players to go one-on-one. You don't have a Steph Curry, you don't have a Kevin Durant, you don't have a LeBron James, you don't have an Anthony Davis, you don't have a James Harden, you don't have a Kyrie Irving. None of the players on his squad are on that level. So stick to what got you there.
I'll still take them in 6. The Raptors' biggest problem, as I've said all along, it's not their history and the psychological, the shadow of them choking in the past or whatever else. The problem with them really is they play an excellent brand of basketball throughout most of the game. And then in crunch time, they tend to as a proportion to the rest of the game, overly ISO their 2 best players, DeRozan and Lowry.
Well, the issue is not that they ISO their 2 best players as much as they're ISOing 2 players who are not good enough to transcend what's going on in the game. Because you can run ISO for transcendent players, they just don't have them.
If you watched late in that game, Lowry dribble, loses the handle, gets it back, dribble, uses up all the time. The shot clock shoots a 3 and misses. That's really not what you want to see. The fundamental problem is their best players, including DeRozan, who Stephen A. was giving credit to start the show, he's special. The fact is,
I would dispute whether or not DeRozan is actually special. I think that's special, but once again, I'm not the type to lavish all types of platitudes on people who I don't think deserve it or don't fit the bill, the exact definition of the term. When I think excellent, I think creme de la creme. Everything underneath that can be anywhere from good to borderline great. When I watch DeMar DeRozan play, when I watch Kyle Lowry play, I see 2 players who their max, their roof, their ceiling is going to be very good. Maybe great in the case of DeRozan. Maybe great.
Neither one is special enough, Stephen A. Neither DeRozan nor Kyle Lowry are good enough, quite, to play hero ball at the end of games and win. They're good enough to be the best players on a team that shares the ball and continues to play the right way late in games. When they've done that, they've won. When they've reverted to form, when the 2 of those guys ISO a little too much, they've lost. The reason for concern would be that the best player on the floor is John Wall. And you saw what he did last night, and so you have to... But that's assuming that the Wizards can get their chemistry together enough to win the next 2 out of 3.
That's why I've stated that this is the most irrelevant series of any of the series in the NBA playoffs. It truly doesn't matter who comes out of this series because neither one of these teams are going to get past the Cleveland Cavaliers anyway, in my view. And not because the Cavaliers necessarily have more talent, but simply because both of these teams are intimidated by LeBron James.
And I have not seen that all year from the Wizards, and I do not anticipate that going forward.
It's interesting because there's a couple of things just covering this game last night being there. Here's the deal, Max Kellerman. A couple of things we need to say. We need to get this out of the way. John Wall is special. Special competitor. He is the box office attraction for the Washington Wizards.
Well, if he's the box office attraction for the Washington Wizards, then if you're a Washington Wizards fan, don't count on winning any championships because he's not good enough to lead you there.
There's a reason he's the $175 million man. Because this brother shows up and he does electrifying stuff.
Look, Stephen A. Smith, I understand that maybe you want to lavish Mr. John Wall with compliments. He is a very talented player, but he does not always show up in pressure situations. As a matter of fact, he's known for disappearing in pressure situations. That's what he did against the Boston Celtics last season.
I've only shot 41% for the field last night, but the bottom line is he finished with 27 points and 14 assists. And more importantly, he's completely validated and proven that the Washington Wizards are not a better team without him.
Well, we knew that anyway. Once again, the Washington Wizards are filled with players who think that they're better than they really are. And unfortunately for John Wall, he's not transcendent enough for them to understand that they're not worthy of trying to challenge his supremacy on the team. And that is what's creating a lot of the acerbic atmosphere in their locker room. That they look at him and they're saying, he's making $170 million a year. He's not good enough to be getting that money. That's what a lot of the vitriol is about. Many of their players think that if they practice a little bit harder, they can be as good as John, if not better. So, unfortunately, they're disillusioned and he may need to find a new environment. It'd probably be best for him if he got traded to a team with a shooting guard who was a great spot-up shooter and some big man help, because that's what he needs.
And the fact that you had Gortat tweeting stuff,
that's why I stated he'd be perfect in Milwaukee, in my view. Maybe him for Jabari Parker and a draft pick. Who knows?
Bill alluding to stuff and others sitting there talking about I forgot what the phrase was, but everybody touching the ball and everybody gets to eat and all of this other stuff.
Yeah, just talking nonsense. Bradley Beal is a snake in the grass. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. But yeah, John Wall to Milwaukee maybe for Brogdon, Jabari Parker and a draft pick.
Stuff. All of them need to shut the hell up. John Wall is the man for that team. But so is Bradley Beal, who, by the way...
No, sir, one of them have to go.
Came into last night's game, only averaging 1.4 points in the fourth quarter.
Because he's not a clutch player. Bradley Beal always disappears in the clutch, and it's even more glaring than John Wall because I don't expect John Wall to make jump shots. I expect Bradley Beal to make them.
For the first two playoff games, but yesterday he showed up. And give him love and give him credit for that. I hope the Beals are listening because the parents were sitting right by me. I hope they're listening. I had to give their son some love. Now, having said all of that, let's be very, very clear about something. Did any of y'all see Kyle Lowry's face after the game? Did you see him at the press conference? Because I spoke to him in the locker room. I spoke to DeRozan in the locker room. And Kyle Lowry pointed to Van Fleet because I'm like, y'all look too much like last year, where Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan on too many pivotal moments were the only offensive weapons on the floor and the other three guys were virtually non-existent. That was a mistake I was shocked that Dwayne Casey, one of the great coaches in the NBA, had made yesterday because he usually hadn't made that mistake before. Kyle Lowry looked at me and pointed right to Fred VanVleet. Why? Because this brother shoots 41% from three-point range. You usually would have him in the game. He didn't play yesterday because he's injured. So because he didn't play, you didn't have that requisite perimeter weapon to assist in spreading the floor. They anticipate and hope that he will come back. And Kyle Lowry...
Stephen A. Smith, that's like if the 90s Bulls lost a playoff game and Michael Jordan pointed to Steve Kerr and said, we lost the game because Steve Kerr didn't play tonight. That sounds ridiculous. Just the fact that you mentioned that story, all that details to me once again is that the Toronto Raptors are not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. If they have to point to Fred VanVleet and say his absence is the reason why we lost the game, like, come on. What Kyle Lowry's really saying is that I'm not a transcendent player, and I agree with you, Kyle Lowry.
Lowry and them boys sat up there, and I tell you, Max Kellerman, I'm not lying to you, bro. I've never seen a team more relaxed and nonchalant after a loss in the postseason game in recent memory. Kyle Lowry was chilling. He did everything but grab a bowl of crunch berries and eat it right in front of my face. He was not concerned. He was not concerned at
Maybe because he believes, as I do, that the Washington Wizards are just a lesser version of the Toronto Raptors.
At all. Their attitude is, look, man, it was an aberration. One game. Yeah, they got us. So be it. It's tied 2-2. All right, we'll see. You know, we still intend on handling our business. We're not worried about it at all. And then afterwards, he goes to the post game podium, and he sits up there and he's just looking. I mean, I wish y'all could have footage of his face. He was just sitting up there looking at the media like, yeah, whatever. And so be it. They are not concerned about the Wizards at all. And if you are the Wizards, you better be mindful of that. You better smell blood and you better go after it. Because if they win Game 5, that means they come into Game 6 Friday night at the Verizon Center in Chocolate City with house money. Because they know they got a Game 7 back on their home court.
Well, championship teams never approach a playoff game like that, Stephen A. Smith. You never go into a Game 6, even if you're up 3-2, thinking that you are approaching that game with house money. Because Game 7 is a free-for-all. It's winner-take-all. And anything can happen in Game 7. We know that the home team has the advantage, but anything can happen. It's a one-game situation. If you're up 3-2 and you're a championship-level team, go into Washington in Game 6 and close them out.
And that's what you don't want. The Wizards got to be concerned about it.
You know, I remember when I was a kid in 1992, the Chicago Bulls played the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. And they were up 3-2. They went into Cleveland in Game 6. Jordan shot terribly in the first 3 quarters. And then in the fourth quarter, he scored something like 18 or 19 points, and they closed him out. And they were happy as a team to close out the Cavaliers because they had just played a 7-game series the round before against the New York Knicks. And you don't want to go 2 straight 7-game series in a row. Now, the Lakers did it back in 88. I believe in 88, the Lakers went 3 straight 7-game series because I believe they played 7-game series against Utah with a very young John Stockton and Karl Malone, 7-game series against the Dallas Mavericks with Mark Aguirre and Rolando Blackman and Sam Perkins, Derek Harper and those cats. And then in the finals, they beat Detroit in 7. So you don't want to do that. That's tempting fate too much to allow all these series to go 7 games. Just finish them off.
They better be ready to handle their business Game 5. They better be ready to go at Toronto. Because I'm telling you right now, Toronto is going to try to blow them out the building in Game 5. And they better be ready.
A word about the best player on each team, Stephen A., which is DeMar DeRozan and John Wall. You know, John Wall is the best player on either team.
I would agree with that, even though I think that the Toronto Raptors have the better backcourt because I think that they play together better.
He is not only probably the fastest player in the league,
well, after Westbrook,
can stop on a dime, can change direction and change his speed probably better than anyone in the league, and is also a totally
I actually think that Donovan Mitchell changed direction better than anyone in the league right now.
Elite passer, can finish in the paint, everything. The thing he can't do very well is shoot from distance. He can't shoot, he's not a pure shooter. It's the same thing with DeRozan, not a pure shooter. So he's taking more threes, and so they have to respect the threat a little bit more, but not a great shooter. Same thing with Westbrook and others.
And kudos to modern-day medicine that John Wall has had so many knee procedures, and he still has explosiveness.
And when you talk about the very best of the best in the NBA, unless you're close to 7 feet tall, right? Unless you're over 6'8". So you look at Ben Simmons or the Greek Freak, they can get away with not being great shooters yet. And even if they never become great shooters because of their size and everything else they can do so well. But guys like even John Wall level talent, or I would take a little quarter step below that, DeRozan really can't be. And so if it comes, and with the Wizards, it does too often come down to hero ball with John Wall. And I don't think that's going to be enough for them. I think the chemistry is fractured on that team.
Absolutely.
And with the Raptors, I think they have a better chance to win generally. Because no, DeRozan's not good enough to play hero ball and win. But when they're sharing the ball, that is a well-oiled offense, and they also play really good team defense.
Yes, but I have to blame the coach for that, because the coach has to implore his team to maintain their offensive principles, even in pressurized moments, because that truly is the test of mental fortitude. Can you maintain your composure when it counts?
Defense.
I got news for you. I disagree with you about DeRozan. I think DeRozan can get it done. He's a star. He's an all-star for a reason. That's number one. Number two, if you put...
Well, the term star can have a very extended meaning, a very extended connotation. You can have a superstar, and then you could just have a slightly glimmering star. I think that DeRozan is a slightly glimmering star. I don't think that he's a supernova.
You put that additional weapon on the floor to help spread the floor, he'd have even more room to operate as opposed to putting him on the floor with Kyle Lowry being his only offensive weapon. Point number three, I like the chemistry that I'm seeing between John Wall and Bradley Beal over these last two games. I love the fact that they were cheering each other on when they were walking off the court after the end of the game. Bradley Beal fouled out with 4:58 left, and they still found themselves in a position where John Wall was on the floor handling his business. I think Bradley Beal has come to the conclusion of appreciating John Wall more than he ever has.
Well, oftentimes that happens. I stated in one of the Steph Curry videos that I did that many times your value on your team or in your franchise or in your corporation, wherever it is that you work, in your relationship will rise once you're no longer around, when a person or people have a chance to truly contemplate what you brought to the table. So that is obviously what happened with Mr. John Wall in relation to Mr. Bradley Beal. I think that he came to understand that no, it's not as easy as it looks playing point guard, especially when you start to lose. It's easy to make those little sniping comments when you start off 6-0, 7-0. But when the losses start to pile up and the same teammates that were helping you gang up on John Wall are starting to turn against you, then you say, you know what, this potato's a little bit too hot. Let me pass it back to John.
Because the load that he was carrying while they were winning games initially, it was so much strong, it was so much harder later on that having John Wall ball the way that he balled, recognizing how easier he makes life for Bradley Beal is something that Bradley Beal has grown to appreciate. Otto Porter, could you show up, please? Could you make sure I don't have to put out an APB on your game? You're better than this, Otto Porter. Could you show up pretty please with sugar on top? Make me a favor. Kelly Oubre, I like his activity. I like his defensive tenacity.
Kelly Oubre is emotionally unstable. If I were someone on the Toronto Raptors, I would target him for provocation, if that's a tack that you want to take. If the Miami Heat were playing against the Washington Wizards, I guarantee you they would target Kelly Oubre for provocation.
I like him drawing offensive fouls. Just stop shooting them damn threes. That ain't your game. Somehow, some way, Scott Brooks stop overloading one side of the court by having, somebody, put double picks for poor.
Well, look, we all know that Scott Brooks is a very basic and rudimentary coach. What he's good for is instilling a sense of team camaraderie. Unfortunately, that seems to have failed in the case of the Washington Wizards.
Porter 1 minute, Beal another, and all of this stuff, and loading it. Have Bradley Beal on the weak side and feed him, and have
Max,
John Wall on
last
the
word
other
here.
side with the ball. Do those
high-end talent. Washington is better than Toronto, but Toronto has a big advantage with the bench, and they play usually a better brand of basketball quickly. You can talk about the...
I agree with you, Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith just stated the series is going 7 games. That's what I predicted. I saw that before this series started. The teams are too evenly matched. It's going to be a home court series.
DeRozan being special, and he's great. John Wall and DeMar DeRozan, my star system, 5-star MVP, 4-star All-Star, those guys are 4-star players because they don't shoot it very well. If either one, particularly Wall, shot it well from a distance.
That's the difference between my rating system and Max Kellerman's. He has a 5-star player as an MVP caliber player. I don't think that that's what a 5-star player is. I think that you can be a high 4-star level player like 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 and win an MVP in the regular season. For me, a 5-star player is someone who can carry you in the playoffs to a championship or contending for a championship. So Anthony Davis is showing me that he may be approaching that 5-star level, as is James Harden, because they've made a huge jump this season. Prior to this season, no. But they're showing me that they could crack into that level with Kawhi, LeBron James, KD, and Steph. But that to me is what a 5-star player is. Can you be the best player on a championship team?
He'd be a 5-star guy.
Don't you go to 4-star?
But they're not. Let's be honest. Neither one is a 5-star player.
Don't you go to 4-star
No,
hotel?
Stephen A. He goes to Diamonds. They're 5 stars. There's very few of
Do
them.
you go to 4-star hotels? You try not.
Sometimes, I suppose.
Sometimes I suppose, but 4-star hotels, they don't have some of the amenities that I prefer, like masseuses that give happy endings. But we're going into commercial.
But, if you want to win a championship, 5-star players are a good idea.
Sometimes he slums in 4 stars. All right, both teams held serve at home.
How would you know, Ms. Molly Karam? You meet him in those hotels?
Game 5 Wednesday in the 6th. Keep this in mind. In a best-of-7 series, when it's knotted at 2-2, the team that wins Game 5 has gone on to win that series 83% of the time.
Well, we all know that Game 5 is pivotal.
We keep it moving, though. Nope.
But anyway, so that's it on the playoff update for the Washington Wizards and Toronto Raptors series. Neither one of these teams have a transcendent player, so yes, I still believe that this series is going to go 7 games, and that's the difference between what we're seeing in this series as opposed to what we saw in the New Orleans Pelicans and Portland Trailblazers series. I also thought that that series was going to go 7 games, but the New Orleans Pelicans have a transcendent player, and they also had supplementary help that were able to provide Anthony Davis with the support that he needed to obliterate the Portland Trailblazers, who have a very basic concept and only have a very good to borderline great player in Damian Lillard, but he's not transcendent. He's not a 5-star player. Anthony Davis is proving thus far in this playoff run that he is deserving of breaking into that upper echelon of players. But anyway, peace.